All right, everybody. I think we can go ahead and maybe get things started. This is David Connor with the Tennessee County Services Association. Appreciate you joining us here this afternoon. Excited to have this promo for this program. It's something we've been working on for quite a while. First had meetings about the cashVest program. That was a new initiative of the National Association of Counties and 3+1 back in early 2020, which if you remember, a lot of things started happening in the world right after that. So it's been a long time in coming. Some of you may have been at our conference, our May conference last year when we had kind of the kickoff announcement. And I'm going to be turning things over here to Kyle Klein in just a minute, who's with us from the National Association of Counties, who probably remember his presentation May last year when he first talked about it. But this program's got tremendous potential to help counties have a better understanding of what all is happening with their cash flow, their liquidity, and putting that money to best use so that every tax dollar is generating the most it possibly can and putting those dollars to work providing services to your citizens. So I'm going to turn things over to Kyle here if he wants to hop on and say a few words about why NACO has been involved with this program as well. I said our association vetted it out and the board voted to enter into an endorsement agreement with them as we were impressed with the potential we think it has for Tennessee counties. Kyle,
Sure.
you there?
I'm here. Well, thanks so much, David. Really grateful for the opportunity to be here with you and with your members. And thank you to our partners at 3+1 for making time to present cashVest today. As David had mentioned, my name is Kyle Klein. I serve as the Financial Partnerships Director at NACO and the NACO FSC. And for those of you who might not know, the FSC stands for the Financial Services Corporation. We're the wholly owned arm of NACO, and our mission is to support NACO's mission of strengthening America's counties. And we do that by identifying value-added, revenue-generating programs that can really offer some efficiencies and some opportunities to add value to everything that you all are doing at your counties on behalf of your taxpayers. cashVest is one of those programs, as David had mentioned, has been vetted through NACO, but also TCSA and also COAT, I should mention as well, in the state of Tennessee. And so we're just really proud of those partnerships. And David, we're really grateful for all the hard work that you're doing on behalf of Tennessee counties and in this partnership. About 3 years ago, we came across cashVest and, we really realized there was something special there in terms of using data, using technology in new ways that previously had not been leveraged to really add that value and be an extension of the county's teams to ensure that every taxpayer dollar is being leveraged as a cash generating asset that it is while that is under your stewardship. And that's exactly what they've done to date. They have generated over $1 billion in brand new revenue. That's brand new non-tax revenue back to the local governments that they've served. So this is a really impactful program. We were just at our legislative conference in DC. I'm sure many of you were out there. And we had a panel, actually heard from several counties that are using this around the country and some of the great results that they've seen. So I know Bill Cherry from 3+1 will be eager to share some of that. But I just want to thank you all for your time and thank you for all that you do for your counties every day. We appreciate the NACO and the TCSA partnership, and we really hope to be able to work with your counties and in any way possible with this program and many others. So thank you all, and I'll turn it back over to, actually, I think at this time I'm going to turn it over to Bill Cherry and introduce Bill, who is our partner, the Director of Public Partnerships at 3+1. So Bill, thank you.
Kyle, thank you very much. David, thank you very much. We appreciate our partnership with TCSA, and I also want to thank the busy folks who took time out of their schedules today to join us as members of TCSA. We're very excited to be here, very happy to have you join us. And I think I'll tell you a little bit about myself first before we get into the slideshow. I grew up in New York State. I was a county legislator for a while. Then I became a chief financial officer of a county, Schoharie County, New York. And in New York, the county treasurers are the equivalent of your county trustees in Tennessee. Served in that role also as a budget officer for the county. Served in that role for 24 years, total of 38 years in public service as an elected official in one form or another. But after I retired, I was put in contact with Joe Rulison and the great team at 3+one. It actually is a continuation, I feel, of my lifetime of public service, because what 3+one and cashVest do for counties is just takes it to the next level of what I always tried to do as a public official, which is safeguard taxpayer dollars, use as few of them as possible to do the very best job that could be done, and to help hardworking taxpayers to keep as much money as they could in their pockets, rather than it being showing up in a tax levy. And that's what cashVest is all about. It's how can we generate more non-tax revenues for municipalities, so that every dollar earned in interest is a dollar less that needs to be collected in taxes. So as you see from the cover page, we call it the delta factor. I'll get a little bit, I'll go into that a little bit farther on another slide. But the delta factor is the delta between, I'll call it, average earnings and superior earnings. And with cashVest system, counties, cities, municipalities all across the country are achieving that delta factor, which is rising to the level of superior earnings. On the next slide, you're going to see some of our state partnerships listed. Thank you, Samantha, on our team, for taking care of the slides for me today. Tennessee is, we're really honored to be partnered with David Connor and TCSA, because we're also partners with Coat in Tennessee. And that's a unique combination of two state associations, both so well regarded and well respected, and both of which have vetted and approved the cashVest program in 3+one. And between those two associations, and of course Kyle and the team at NACO, it's really a gold seal of approval for our services. And what we do is we're a revenue generating agency. That's what our goal is. Our goal is to help municipalities generate more earnings than they have ever dreamed possible. And all of these state associations are a part of that. And that leads me right into this next slide, which is just a cross-section of a few different clients. These are actual clients. I put these figures together about a week and a half ago. And this tells you, this will show you the impact of the cashVest system. First client, that they have average liquidity and cash on deposit of about $116 million. You may not know, as county mayors and county commissioners, you may not know precisely how much cash you have on deposit at any one time. I'm sure your trustee or your finance director shares that information with you. But what we do is we drill down and we find as much liquidity as possible. A lot of times, there's multiple banking relationships. There's, be 5, 6, 7 banks the county's doing business with. Could be dozens of accounts within each bank. While of course following all fiduciary regulations about keeping funds separate, we're able to show the full power of all of those funds, all of that liquidity combined. And it helps with higher interest rates from the banks. It actually helps the banks because they know when funds are going to be left on deposit. So client number one, $116 million in general county. During the most recent 12 months, they earned just over 1.1 million. Now remember, interest rates as you know, are certainly on the rise, and they had a historic, unprecedented spike in 2022. But 2022 started at 0%. And it ended obviously higher at the end of 22, but the year started at 0%, and it was a full 6 months before rates even surpassed 1%. But this client earned $1.1 million, and that $1.1 million as a percentage of their property tax levy is 1.7%. So had they not earned that money, they would have seen approximately a 2% higher tax levy. And the total cumulative earnings since using cashVest, and cashVest is a relatively new program, are really our partnership with NACO, and the expansion has taken place over the last, I'll say, 3 to 4 years. Our president, Joe Rulison, created the program more like 10 years ago, but it has steadily grown and exploded over the last few years. So total cumulative for that client, 6.5 million. And I gave you a cross section, by the way. As you see that I've used clients where their liquidity is growing larger. It all depends on the size of your county. I could just as easily show a slide with lower denomination counties. We have many counties in the $60-70 million range, small cities in the $30 to $40 million liquidity range. We also serve school districts and towns. But this is a cross section of counties that are probably not too dissimilar from your average across the state of Tennessee. Next client down, 146 million. Last year, 1 year only, they earned 1.4 million, and that was 3.7% of their tax levy. So without those cashVest earnings, they would have either had to raise taxes 3.7%, or they would have had to have drastic cuts in services. Cumulative earnings, 9.1 million. Client number 3, a little bit bigger entity, 1.9 million earned last year, 4.4% of their tax levy is the equivalent of that. And so far they've generated just under $10 million. Client number 4, 229 million, earned 1.7 million last year. By the way, this is a time when that client number 4, without cashVest, without using our liquidity maximizing tools, earnings probably would have been somewhere in the 300 to 400,000 range, something like that. So we're not talking nickels and dimes or a slight increase. We're talking a really significant increase in revenue. In client number 4's case, they're in a high tax state, so that's about 1.5%. But again, in a high tax state, it's maybe even more important to magnify those funds as much as possible. Client 5, $486 million liquidity, obviously a larger county, although there are some similar to that size in Tennessee. 4.3 million earned last year over just 1 year. That's 7.4% of their tax levy, and total accumulated earnings, 27 million. And the last client, 739, obviously a large county, not our largest, by the way. We serve counties and municipalities and public entities of all sizes, up to and including several counties that have budgets well above 1 billion with a B. But this cross section tells you that we serve small, medium, and large counties, and the results honestly are always the same. The results are always a drastic increase in revenues. Last year, client number 6 earned $7.5 million 1 year alone, just in earnings. That's 7.5% of their tax levy. So far, they've earned 26 million. So you can imagine the financial impact that has on each one of those counties. Next slide, please. So how do we do it? It's not magic. It is technology. It is expertise, and it's us constantly analyzing the cash that your county has on deposit. And we work for you. We work for your finance office, for your county. Um, and the data we're able to provide them helps them make the best possible decisions about investing of funds, banking costs, and borrowings. We're not a bank. We don't ever touch your money. We're not trying to compete with your local bank. What we're trying to do is make all banks sharpen their pencils, give you the very best rate that are possible. And they do that because they know that banks are willing to do that because they know once 3+1 is involved, there's going to be market comparisons, and they're going to have to, they're going to have to step up and compete. And honestly, that's a requirement now in Tennessee under the state comptroller's guidelines, is making sure that you as stewards of your counties are searching for and finding the best rates of return. And that's exactly what 3+1 does. On average, we find 73% more cash that can be put to work earning interest. And that's, as Kyle mentioned, that $1 billion. That's the $1 billion we found. Now, I mean, how do we find that? How can there be money that the finance office isn't aware of? It's not that they're not aware of it. I'm sure your finance offices have everything balanced right to the penny. But there are multiple accounts that the finance office may think are not, don't rise to the level of worrying about trying to invest the funds, because it's either a somewhat smaller amount, or it just may not. They may be stretched for time and staff, and it takes a lot of analysis to see how long those funds will remain on deposit. But in general, if, let's just say, a municipality thought they had $50 million, let's just say, available to invest in CDs and treasury bills at higher rates, it's probably, with us working with them, it's probably going to be more like 80 to 90 million. And that's one of the big pluses we bring, is finding that additional cash. And as we go on to the next slide, I want to describe, there's three types of cash management. Again, I know I'm talking to county mayors and to county commissioners. I won't go into too much into the weeds of financing. That you're not probably all that concerned with that. I'm sure you have faith in your staff and in your fellow elected officials. But in general, in my experience, municipalities tend to fall in one of three categories of how they deal with their cash. The first category, not very common, quite honestly, but certainly it does happen. And the first scenario is the municipality simply keeps the cash sitting in a series of low interest, sometimes honestly they're no interest bank accounts. The banks love this, of course, because the funds are generating a lot of revenue for the bank, but they're not really generating any revenue for the county. It's very passive cash management. It doesn't really meet most investment policy guidelines, because there's not a sharpening of pencils. There's not a searching out higher interest rates. Tends to happen mostly among smaller municipalities, but I list it as number one because it does happen. The much more common scenario, I'll call it the most common scenario, is scenario number two. That's where there's a series of banking relationships, banks, 6 or 7, 8, 10 banks, 10, 15 bank accounts in each one. So you're talking upwards of 100 different bank accounts. And most of the money remains in low interest, either checking accounts or low interest day-to-day accounts. But, and this is common in Tennessee, a good deal of the cash being deposited into a municipal investment pool. You have an excellent pool in Tennessee, and right now the rate of return is very favorable because it follows the Treasury. Your pool follows the Treasury, U.S. Treasury increase in interest rates, and so that's a good thing. It's much better than the money sitting in a checking account not earning money. And right now, and I don't mean to pick on your pool, this goes for all pools. Right now, the pools are paying a fair return, somewhere in that 4% range or maybe above. But it was only a year ago that they were paying zero. So when pools were paying zero, including, well, I'll just say all municipal pools were essentially paying zero because it's day-to-day cash. It might have been 2 basis points or 3 basis points, but it's, it doesn't rise to the level of generating any money. When that was happening, 3+1 clients were still earning 1% or above. So that's the delta, which again, I'll talk about in a minute, but that's the delta, is the delta between money sitting in municipal pools or day-to-day money market accounts earning X, whatever X is. A year ago, X was zero. Right now, X is 4%. But whatever the municipal pools and the money markets are paying, there's an additional amount that can be earned over and above that. That's the delta. And just to finish up on number two, cash management, such as number two, again, very common. It does generate higher earnings than option number one, but it fails to tap into the powerful future value of cash. And by that, I mean that money that's just being deposited in pools or money market accounts, you're getting paid for today. Today, that amount of money that you have on deposit at today's rate is worth a certain amount of revenue for your county. But that interest rate calculation does not include what your money is going to be worth 6 months from now or 12 months from now. You don't get paid for that because there's no guarantee to the pool or to the money market account you're going to leave that money there. So they're only paying you for today, which leads us to scenario number three. And scenario number three is a combination of guaranteed fixed term CDs and U.S. Treasury bills, plus those important municipal pools and money markets and checking accounts. This is best practices. This is what state comptrollers want to see. This is what auditors want to see. This is cash on deposit being used as an asset, as a tool to generate maximum earnings. It's still safe and secure. Obviously, safety is number one, and that's why the comptroller's investment guidelines are written as they are. That's why your own county's investment policies are adopted by you as the leaders of the county, and safety is the number one concern. And of course, that's the highest priority. But once you do secure that safety, either through CDs or U.S. Treasury bills, once you include those in the mix and you start thinking towards the future, staggered maturity, longer term cash, instead of $100 million sitting in a state pool, if it turns out that the data shows, and that's what we do, we're the data experts. If our data shows that of that $100 million, 50 million of it is going to remain on deposit for the next, we'll just say 6 months, it's absolute guaranteed that 50 million of it is going to remain on deposit for 6 months. Why not take advantage of the interest rate on 6 month CDs or 6 month treasuries to invest those funds. Now you're tapping into that future value and you're getting paid today for what the money is going to be worth next week, next month, and 6 months from now. To do that, you have to incorporate future cash flow forecasting. You can't just guess, right? That's the way I had to do it when I was a treasurer. It was a back of the envelope calculation of how many millions do I have on deposit? What are my upcoming big expenditures? And when I say upcoming, I mean over the next 3 to 6 months. What are my what do I foresee happening with revenues? And then I had to then I would compare interest rates and make an educated guess as to how much I had to invest, how much liquidity I had available to invest, and I had to then guesstimate how long I could safely deposit those funds without coming up short and finding that I didn't have enough day-to-day liquidity to pay a bill because it was tied up in a CD. So that was the old way. Then comes along 3+1 and cashVest, and it eliminates the guesswork. It also puts it on our shoulders so that we provide that data to your finance office, so they don't have to do any of the guesswork or the legwork. It frees up time for them. And this is a very effective, proactive cash management style, and it generates much higher tax revenues. Sam, we can go to the next slide. And remember, David, if any of our guests have any questions, if you want to, we're going to definitely save time for questions. But I also, if anybody submits any, just let me know, and I'll be happy to answer questions as we go along. Peer bank benchmarks are important because, to be perfectly honest, banks can become complacent. If a bank knows that the county has, $50 million sitting in the bank accounts, and it tends to stay there, even in low interest bank accounts, the bank they're gonna make money off it. They're in business to make money, and we certainly respect that. We have great relationships with banks all across the country, and we understand and respect their goal, and they do provide great services to the county. But we also want to make sure that the bank is paying as much as they possibly can for the fact that your liquidity is available to them for them to make money on. And here's an example of when we compare rates. I put these together February 7th. $5 million investment, 12-month CD on February 7th was 4.82%. Treasury bill was 4.86. There's a strange quirk, but there it is. A 6-month Treasury bill with 4.93%. I suspect that was because that was before Treasury did their most recent quarter point increase. But it's interesting that the 6-month T-bill was paying slightly more than the 12-month T-bill. Then a 6-month CD, 4.67, 90-day Treasury bill, 4.71, 90-day CD, 4.65. And money market, we'll call that money market / state pools, or 3.75%. So on your $5 million, if you knew for sure that $5 million was not going to be expended, and that's what we do, you can be, our data provides that confidence. You can be sure that $5 million will not be expended for 1 year. That $5 million at the 4.86%, which is a T-bill, is going to generate $243,000 in interest for the county. On the other hand, if that $5 million remains in a pool or a money market, it's going to generate $187,500. Still an appreciable amount, but what about that difference? The delta is 1.1%. That's the additional revenue $55,500. And remember, probably most of you on this call represent counties that have significantly more cash than obviously the $5 million. Most counties have more like the numbers that I showed you on the previous slides. You know, they have 100, 150, 200, 300, sometimes 500 million in cash. So this is just one example of what can happen on one $5 million CD. And you multiply that 55,000 times the number of CDs that you can theoretically take, or the number of treasury bills, and you can see where those multi-millions in additional revenue come from. We can go to the next slide, please, Sam. This is our future forecast. We provide this to all clients. This is a data analysis of previous. We look at hundreds of thousands of previous transactions for your county. Every dollar that came in, every dollar that went out. We factor in unexpected events. We even factored in COVID before COVID was a real thing. It was built in what you see in that bottom brown line, the low forecast. Our forecast pre-COVID still included that what if, that bottom line. And it turns out we were right on target. And when we told our clients during COVID, yes, of course you're concerned. We're all concerned about revenues and what will COVID do to restaurants and hotels and sales tax revenues. But don't panic. You have sufficient liquidity. You will have sufficient liquidity, and we'll continue to monitor this and we'll let you know. So the blue line is our forecast for this municipality's liquidity. You can see on the left, this is a 182-day chart, so 6 months. You'll see that our forecast shows them at $100 million on the left side of the page. After 63 days, they dip down to in the 90 million range. And then as they get up towards 112 days, you see they're up to 100 and just under 150. At 126 days, they're at 150. And they actually end the 6-month period at about 100 and looks like about 185 million, something like that. So that forecast is what enables your finance department, your trustee, to have the confidence to be able to take out those 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 million dollar treasury bills, because they can rest assured that the funds will be available. Which leads me to the next slide of how that translates into additional money. This is a 1-year chart from left to right this is a bit of a smaller municipality. You can see that at the high point, I'll call it 2/3 of the way through the year, this municipality has about maybe $55 million. I'm looking at the top of the gray chart, and I'm comparing it to the numbers on the left side of the chart. It's about 55 million, but this is a very common looking chart in that for your counties, it would look the same. The gray area is working capital. It turns out that not all capital is working capital. That's what finance offices sometimes think is like, I need all this money. I need all this liquidity because I've got to pay bills and I got to meet payroll and I got to pay my retirement contributions. We get that, but that's the gray area up top. That's the ups and the downs and the squiggles, sort of like the waves, at the top of the ocean. That's just the ins and the outs. And yes, you have to have money to meet that, to meet those obligations. But the deeper you go, the deeper the liquidity level, the more you can be assured that those funds will remain on deposit. And obviously, the longer the duration of any investment. So the green area is a cushion. In this county's example, we assign them a cushion of about $4 million. But then we go to that blue line, liquidity level 1, and if you look down in the purple at the bottom, liquidity level 1, that's about $4 million. And our data shows that this municipality has $4 million to invest anywhere from up to 1 to 6 months. You would probably do it in a series of staggered CDs. If I was treasurer or trustee of this county, I'd probably say, well, I got $4 million for liquidity level 1. Let's do a $2 million CD for 3 months. Let's do a $1 million CD for 6 months, and let's do a $1 million CD for I don't know, somewhere in between there, maybe 45 days or something like that. So, I would have staggered, laddered maturities, and that's good too, because you're always as interest rates rise, your investments are maturing, and it frees up that liquidity to now invest it at the higher rates. So that's a good thing. When interest rates are decreasing, which is going to happen again sometime, when interest rates are decreasing, the advantage is you're still earning money at the higher rate on your fixed term investments, and you get to earn that interest until maturity. And then, of course, as interest rates drop, the new interest rates might be lower. But that's the winning combination of in scenario number 3, as I mentioned, of using fixed income. Liquidity level 2, 6 to 12 months, 8.1 million. Liquidity level 3, 12 to 18 months. In Tennessee, you're not going to go out beyond 24 months in most cases. I know by comptroller's regulations, 24 months is kind of the maximum anyway. That's very common for counties. When I was a treasurer, I never went beyond 18 months. But we do have authorities, utilities and authorities where they're like water authorities and so on, where they go out sometimes as far as 5 years. So we base the durations on what that client it needs to what their liquidity needs are. Next slide, Stan, please. There's another plus to this type of cash management, and that's the rating agencies and the auditors love to see a municipality do this. First of all, S&P, Fitch, and Moody's, 10% of their evaluation of your county's credit rating, 10% of that is based strictly on liquidity. So when the liquidity data is available to them, such as in our regular reports, we provide full quarterly reports to the finance office of full of charts and data and more financial information, daily ins and outs than probably you'd need to see. You care about the big picture. Well, the big picture is if S&P, Moody's, and Fitch's base your municipal rating, your bond rating on liquidity, having those cashVest reports can be a really important tool. Allegheny County, New York, the treasurer there is a lady named Terry Ross. Terry has been using our cashVest system for a long time. Their county went out for a big bond issuance, and while on the rating call with S&P, the word liquidity came up, and Terry mentioned them. Well, I have my quarterly reports from 3+1 liquidity analysis. If I give that to you, will it help? And they said, sure, give it to us and let us take a look. This is a while ago because obviously they know us well now. But anyway, she gave them the report, and by Terry's own calculations, it saved them $1.2 million in borrowing fees. So just having the data can decrease your cost on any bond issuances that you do have to have. And auditors, of course, love it. Auditors and comptrollers, they look for, and in fact, often write into, as your state comptroller has, they write into their regulations the requirement that public entities act responsibly. You've got to safeguard the funds, but they also are responsible. They have a fiduciary responsibility to maximize the interest earnings. And what does that mean? Maximize interest earnings. It means determining how much liquidity you actually have. cashVest does it. Determining how long what's the duration that cash can be confidently remain on deposit. That's those future forecasts. And then the third leg of that stool is comparing interest rates to make sure that you're getting, it doesn't have to necessarily be the highest interest rate, but the interest rates that are being awarded on your investments should be at least comparable, or they should have some relationship to what other banks would offer, some fairness factor. So that's why cashVest kind of covers all those bases and takes out all the guesswork, and at the same time not only pays for itself, but more than pays for itself. And the other side of that equation is banking fees. And Sam, we can talk about that this next slide. I won't go into a lot of detail on this. This is one that we use for finance offices. I won't go into all of the items on the left are the typical the acronyms that trustees and bankers use. ECR, earnings credit rate, FDIC, you know what FDIC is, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. There's fees involved with all of that stuff. For this, our service includes RFP prep. We will help you do banking RFPs. And it's very simple online process where all respondents can submit their data, and it's almost like going out to bid, in that in this county's case, there was 9 banks that responded to the RFP. And you might think, well, it's kind of, I don't know, one bank's the same as another. But here you see bank number 1, after all of the evaluations are done of how much are they going to pay us on our money, also how much money are they requiring us to keep at 0 interest for compensating balance, how much are they going to charge us per check, what's the fee, how much per deposit. And so bank number 1, it turns out that it will benefit the county to the tune of $605,000 if they use bank number 1. Now, the bank they were using, by the way, is bank number 9. Go to the far side. That bank number 9, when the RFP was issued, said, nope, we're pretty happy. We think their fees are right. We think everything's kind of okay. And so that was the bench line. You'll see that's in the pink there, the 0. And then we evaluated all of the responding banks, and you can see that there's a difference of over $500,000 in savings for the county. And that this county actually did switch banks. They didn't choose number 1. They chose bank number 2, $499,000. For their purposes, they liked the idea that bank number 2 was waiving all fees for the first 18 months. And they liked that more than they liked the additional money in bank number 1. So they chose bank number 2. But it would be almost impossible to gather that kind of data and to analyze it for a finance office to do it on its own. I know when I was a county treasurer, there's no way that I would have had the tools or the time to do this. And but that's what our cashVest system does. Next slide, Sam. I think we're coming towards the end, and we'll leave time for questions, but it really comes down to this simple no risk fee guarantee. quite simply, if we're unable to find ways to help your finance increase your municipality's interest revenues or find ways to save on banking fees, if we can't do that exceed the cost of our annual subscription fee, your county's going to pay us nothing. We'll still provide you with a copy of the report. There's a lot of insight there. And we'll thank you for giving us the opportunity to evaluate it. But quite honestly, that just doesn't happen, except with the tiniest of municipalities. There are times when they just don't have enough, and I mean tiny, where somebody maybe only has $2 or $3 or $4 million. Sometimes they just don't have enough liquidity. They're stretched to the limit. And we find that there's not much we can do for them. And we tell them that, we give them a report. But for counties in Tennessee, I'm confident that we will be able to do that we will find ways to help your finance office increase your revenues. By the way, our fees are based upon a sliding scale. It's based upon the size of your county. It's based upon the size of your annual budget. Be happy to talk to anyone afterwards about what the prospective fee would be. But rest assured that the additional revenue will far exceed the fee. So David, I think that's it for my presentation, and I'm happy to address any questions anyone might have.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. Yeah, so if we got a smaller crowd today, so if you don't want to type in the chat, you could just kind of unmute and ask a question if you got something. I've got a couple I was going to throw out. When our membership and our board first started looking at this, one of the questions that came to us is like, this really involves the functions of the trustee's office. How do they feel about it? So that's where I think I encouraged you guys to reach out to COAT. Can you talk a little bit about how y'all are doing outreach to county trustees?
Yeah, you bet. I've really developed some good friendships with trustees in Tennessee already. I was just at the COAT board retreat in Memphis. I'm going to come back. Going to come back to the state in May for the COAT conference then. And so there are several counties that are already in the process of moving forward. I have moving forward with 3+1. I've met with personally with quite a few of the trustees. I've contacted every trustee, either by a combination of an email, usually followed up by a handwritten note, and then offered to do a webinar like this with them, or to come and visit in person when I'm in the state. So
and their response has generally been pretty positive, right?
Yeah, it's been very positive. Ted Beatty, as the president of COAT, he's the trustee of Rutherford County. Diane Williams is the trustee of Williamson County. Two really respected leaders in the state. And I don't want to speak for Teb or Karen, but Karen Paris. But I believe that both of those counties would probably move forward, and I think others will as well. So the trustees, I believe, are in favor of this, certainly.
Yeah. Well, let's see if any of our folks on here have got a question or anything for Bill or other information you'd be looking for. Not seeing any right now. You've mentioned a couple of times about the comptroller's office. I said, you all study and examine the rules and regulations and laws in every state on public deposits, correct? So that anything you talk to these counties about, any recommendations you make are things that you know are fully vetted and in compliance with the comptroller's regulations.
We do, absolutely, David. Yeah, actually, I was just downloaded a couple of days ago the Tennessee Comptroller's investment guidelines, and I provided it to our staff so that they would be aware of that. Nothing too unusual there in Tennessee. It's kind of the same things I talked about. It's CDs are allowed, treasury bills are allowed, And also unusual that I hadn't seen before, the comptroller requires counties to compare interest rates and try to find the best interest rate. So yeah, we stay on top of that always.
Yeah, we do have a question in the chat here now from Terry Boyd. She's asking, do I start this? If we're going to look at this in my county, should I start the conversation with the trustee or the finance director?
Well, I think it all depends on how the county is structured. Most counties are unique in how the relationships work. I believe the trustees are the CFO that's responsible for the depositing and
Yeah.
investing of funds.
Right.
So I would start with the trustee, but actually it's great to have a partnership with that. Just trying to
Ter-
think. I think it's
Yeah,
go ahead.
Terry, remind me, which county are you with? They may have already had some issues. Okay, Sumner County. Have you guys had any contact with the trustee there?
Let's see, Sumner County. Let me just look. Trustee is Cindy Williams. I have not met Cindy. I have not met Cindy personally. I have written to her just last month, and I also sent her an email in September. So I would say, and I've also included her on we send out in generally a weekly blog about cashVest and some of our best practices, and she's on the list for that. But I have
Okay.
not met her personally.
All right. But you'd be happy to do a webinar demo and answer questions for their finance officer trustee, either one, correct?
Of course, either one or both. Just did one for Rick Story and his finance and his finance director. And the finance director was, let's see, that's Washington County, and the finance director is a fellow named Mitch Meredith, and they were both sitting at the same desk, looking at the same computer while I made the presentation to them, and they were both in favor of moving forward. So it's great to have that sort of buy-in.
Sure. All right. So we're just a few minutes left in the hour. If anybody else had another question, if not, we can kind of wrap things up. But so we will have this PowerPoint presentation and also have the video up on our website probably sometime tomorrow. So if you all have seen this and you either want to show it to your trustee or show it to your finance director or other members of your county commission, anyone like that, that video will be available for you all to share probably by tomorrow.
Wonderful. And I saw the chat there from Terry. Terry, I just want to say thank you very much. I'm honored to have you be sold on it, especially as being a CPA. My wife's an accountant. She's not a CPA, but she's an accountant. And so I have great respect for your profession, and the fact that you'd be willing to recommend us to the trustee means a great deal. Thank you.